They had already written the ending for the man in bed 9. The surgeons treated his chart as a formality, the administrators treated his bed as a line item, and the aides called him the difficult one because the fury in his eyes still had somewhere to go. Only a quiet night nurse in faded green scrubs refused to read his stillness as a verdict, and when he forced out one cracked syllable that no civilian on that floor could place, she bent to his ear and answered with a call sign from a raid the records swear never happened. Welcome in before we start. If this story gets its hooks in, you tap, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city you are listening from. It always amazes me how far these stories travel. We are not spending another dollar keeping a corpse comfortable. Dr. Warren Ashby said it in the low, reasonable voice he used when he wanted the whole ward to hear him and pretend they had not. He said it at the foot of bed 9 on Ward 3 East at Cypress Ridge Veterans Medical Center in San Antonio, with 4 residents fanned behind him like a color guard. The man in the bed heard every word. Everyone knew he heard. Senior Chief Petty Officer Cole Brantley lay under a thin cotton blanket still from the collarbone, down eyes fixed on a water stain shaped like Texas on the ceiling tile above him. 7 months earlier, he had been a Navy SEAL team leader with a grip that could bend rebar and a service record that most of the people now discussing his death were not cleared to open. Now he needed a wedge of foam to keep his shoulder from breaking down. He needed a machine to remind his chest to rise. He needed 2 aids and a slide board to be turned so his skin would not rot against the sheet. To Ashby, that arithmetic came out to finished. To the board, it came out to expensive. To most of the staff, it came out to a kind of quiet danger, the danger of a strong man who was angry and could not move his hands. To Nora Beckett, it came out to something else. It came out to wrong. She stood at the supply cart in scrubs that had gone the soft gray-green of grass in August, a size too loose across her lean shoulders. Her dark hair was pinned up in a knot that had given up around the edges. Her eyes stayed down because quiet nurses lasted longer on wards ruled by proud men. But Nora was not studying the floor tiles. She was counting the man in the bed, his breaths per minute. The film of sweat at his hairline that had no business being there in a room kept at 68 degrees. The way his right eyelid moved. 1 blink. A pause. 2 blinks. A pause. 1. It was not a twitch. It was a pattern, and she had spent a long time in another life learning that patterns were the only thing in the world that never lied. Ashby turned to his residents. "Document no meaningful motor return," he said. "Continue passive range of motion. Begin the family on long-term placement counseling. Gently." A first-year named Lena Ferris shifted her weight. Sir Nurse Beckett flagged that his pressure drops whenever we extend his neck for the pillow change. Ashby let a small smile arrive the way frost arrives on a window, slow and from the edges. Nurse Beckett flags a great many things. 2 of the residents smiled with him, not out loud, just enough to be counted on his side later. Nora kept her face flat and stepped a half-pace closer to the bed. "His vitals spike every time the pillow is stacked too high," she said. "Every single time. It is not random." "Are you telling me," Ashby said, "that the patient is diagnosing himself through the medium of your intuition, no doctor? Then what are you telling me? That his injury may not be as complete as the imaging says it is." The room changed temperature. A respiratory tech near the window stopped writing. An aide stared at the monitor as if it might rescue her. Every person on Ward 3 East knew the rule of Ashby's service. You did not correct him. You did not say the words missed diagnosis where a trainee could hear them. You did not make him smaller in front of the people he was teaching to be him. Nora knew the rule too. She had survived rules that would have folded Warren Ashby in half. He walked toward her without hurry, hands clasped behind his back, a professor closing on a slow student. "Miss Beckett, this is a neurological rehabilitation unit. It is not a field hospital, and it is not a war movie. Instinct does not outvote an MRI." Somewhere under her ribs, the old world stirred. Rotor wash, grit in her teeth, and the taste of copper high in the back of her throat. A young man screaming her name over the engine, her own voice going flat and steady the way it only ever went when everything was on fire. Keep the spine neutral. Keep him breathing. Do not let him slip under. She swallowed it the way she swallowed everything now whole and without a sound. "Yes, doctor," she said. Ashby lowered his voice and lowered it was worse. "You have been on my floor 11 weeks. In that time you have questioned 2 medication orders, 1 transfer, and now a prognosis I put my name on. Do you know what that tells me?" I documented patient safety concerns. "It tells me you are new here and already exhausting." She said nothing. In her scrub pocket, her thumb found the coin without being told to an old challenge coin gone black on one face from a heat she never talked about, and she rolled it once against her fingers. It made a small, dry click that only she could hear. Ashby looked around at his little audience. "This is what happens when good nurses spend too many years on veteran wards," he said. "They start to believe that gratitude is a credential. They confuse a man's medals with his spinal cord." Nobody laughed that time. The joke had a body in the room. Cole Brantley's eyes moved, not toward Ashby, toward Nora, and the look in them was not the look of a patient begging. It was the flat, level look of a man handing off a task to someone he had decided could carry it. Do something. Nora made herself stay still. She was a nurse here. Only a nurse. No rank on her collar, no call sign in her mouth, no aircraft turning overhead, no harness biting into her shoulders as she dropped through smoke toward men that nobody else could reach. Only Nora Beckett. 37, quiet, useful, and as close to invisible as she had learned to make herself. Ashby leaned over the bed. "Senior Chief," he said in the loud, slow voice people used on the very old and the nearly dead. "Denial is normal after a catastrophic injury. We are going to help you accept your new reality." Cole's lips moved. No sound came out. Nobody saw it but Nora, because nobody else was looking at his mouth. She was always looking at the mouth. You learned that in a place where the wounded could not always shout. She moved to the head of the bed. "Do not engage him," Ashby said. Cole's eyes locked onto hers and held. His lips shaped the word, again cracked and dry, the muscles fighting a body that would not answer. Nora bent down until her ear was inches from his mouth. A rasp came out of him. One broken syllable scraped over a throat that had almost forgotten how. "Long." She went very still. "Not long." Longbow. The name landed in her, like cold water poured straight into the chest. Longbow had been a call sign on an operation that appeared on no record any civilian in this building could ever request. Longbow had been the voice that held a landing zone open with a shattered arm and one working radio while the valley came apart around them. Longbow had counted her down through the static as she rode a hoist into a burning wreck that everyone above had already written off. Copper line. 7 years gone. A classified recovery. No names, no paper anyone here could read. Cole Brantley had no business knowing her face, but his eyes knew her. His eyes had known her since the moment she walked into the room. Ashby folded his arms. "What did he say?" Nora did not answer him. She was looking at Cole, and Cole was looking back, drowning in a body that would not let him surface, waiting to see if she was really who he thought she was. She bent down one more time, close to his ear, and gave him the only thing she had left to give a man in that much dark. "Longbow," she whispered back. His eyes flooded. A tremor crossed his throat. Not enough to lift his head, more than enough to prove there was a whole living man still trapped behind the stillness. Somewhere above them, the ceiling vent ticked. Nora straightened up, and when she turned around, every face on Ward. 3 East had changed, and Warren Ashby was staring at her, as if she had just spoken in a language he had assumed was extinct. "What?" he said slowly. "Did you just call my patient?" "His call sign," Nora said. "There is no call sign anywhere in this chart." "No." "Then how do you know it?" She looked at Cole instead of at Ashby. "Because I was there when he earned it." For a moment, nobody on the ward breathed. Lena Ferris had stopped pretending to take notes. The respiratory tech was staring at Nora, the way you stare at a coworker you thought you knew and just watched pick a lock. Ashby recovered first the way men like him always recovered, by deciding the strange thing had not really happened. "You will not run military theater on my service," he said. "Effective. Now you are off this patient. Someone page me a float nurse." Cole blinked hard. Once, twice. A third time, fast, his jaw straining. Nora read it the way you read a face in a rotor downdraft without needing the words. "You cannot pull the only person on this floor he can talk to," she said. "I can remove a nurse who has become a problem." The monitor cut him off. A soft tone climbed into a sharper one, and the numbers on the screen began to slide. Heart rate 51. Then 46. Blood pressure 84/50. Cole's face had gone the color of wet paper under the shadow of his beard. Nora's eyes went to the pillow. During the exam, his head had shifted on the foam. His chin was tipped up. Now, the neck stretched past neutral, exactly the position she had been trying to tell them about for a week. "His pressure is dropping," she said. "Look at his neck." Ashby barely glanced at the monitor. "Vagal response. He is anxious. Give him a minute." "Heart rate 42, Nora said. She reached for the pillow. Ashby caught her wrist. Not hard. Just enough to make it a statement in front of the residents. The whole ward went cold and quiet. Nora looked down at the hand on her wrist, then up at his face, and for one long second every buried piece of her went silent and precise at the same time. Distance. Grip angle. The 3 ways this ended if she decided it should. Then she remembered where she was standing, and that the man on the bed needed her more than she needed to be right. And she simply turned her wrist along the line of his thumb, where the grip was weakest, and stepped free. "Take your hand off me, doctor," she said, "and let me fix his airway." The alarm climbed again. Heart rate 39, oxygen 90. Lena Ferris stepped forward. "Maybe we should reposition him, sir." "Stay where you are," Ashby snapped. Nora had already moved. She slid the pillow down, cupped the back of Cole's skull in both hands, and eased his head into a straight line with his spine. "Neutral," she said, half to the room and half to the man under her hands. "No extension. I have you." Heart rate 36. Cole's eyes went wide. Air was not moving right. Her voice changed. It did not get louder. It got lower and flatter and cleaner, and it cut through the noise like a blade through gauze. "Ferris, pull the rapid response. Get me the airway card and suction at the bedside now. Reyes, I need you." A tall male nurse who had been logging vitals 2 rooms down appeared in the doorway. Inside 3 seconds. Thomas Reyes had a way of arriving before you finished saying his name. "On you," he said. "Page neurosurgery," Nora told him. "Tell them possible high cervical compression with autonomic collapse. Not a consult. An emergency." Nobody moved for half a breath. Then Nora lifted her eyes from the monitor and looked at them, and something in that look reached down under everybody's training and pulled the response straight out of them before Ashby could get in the way. They moved. "You have no authority to call a rapid response," Ashby said. His voice had gone thin. "I have a symptomatic patient." Nora answered, not looking at him. Put it in my file. The rapid response team came through the door in a clatter of rolling steel. A critical care nurse named Gloria Ton took one look at the screen and one look at Nora's hands cradling the man's head. What am I walking into? Bradycardia and hypotension every time his neck goes into extension, Nora said. I think we are missing a high cervical compression. Airway is at risk. I want atropine drawn. Ashby cut in. This is a chronic complete cord injury. She is overreacting to positional artifact. Gloria did not look at him. She looked at the patient. Senior Chief, blink once if you can hear me. One blink. Blink once if your neck hurts. One blink, slow and deliberate. The room got very quiet around that single unmistakable answer. Gloria turned back to Nora. Okay, I am with you. 0.5 milligrams atropine ready to repeat, Nora said. Keep him flat and keep his head in line with mine. I did not order any medication, Ashby said. Gloria looked at the monitor, then at Nora, then at the doctor. With respect, sir, he is symptomatic and dropping. I am giving it. Give it, Nora said. She gave it. The number on the screen wobbled, caught, and began to climb. 34. 38. 45. Cole's color came back a shade. His eyes never left Nora's face, and she held his head as if that contact was the only thing keeping the whole man tethered to the floor of the world. A neurosurgery fellow arrived 7 minutes later, breathless and annoyed, gown half-tied. Somebody want to tell me what the emergency is? Ashby stepped in front of the bed. A miscommunication. My nurse got excited. Nora spoke over him without raising her voice. High cervical cord injury, 7 months out now with autonomic collapse, triggered by neck extension, and a new pain response confirmed by blink. His prior imaging may have missed a dynamic compression, or he is developing a hematoma. He needs an MRI with strict neutral spine precautions, and he needs it before he arrests. The fellow blinked at her. And you are a nurse who is 30 seconds from being suspended, Ashby said. The fellow ignored him and leaned over the bed. Senior Chief, once for yes, twice for no. Do you understand me? One blink. Neck pain. One blink. Worse when we tip your head back. One firm blink. The fellow straightened, and his easy irritation was gone. Why was neurosurgery never called on this? There was no indication, Ashby said. Nora held out the small notebook she kept in her scrub pocket, the pages dense with her own tight handwriting. There was. 6 days of pressure drops with positioning. 6 days of bradycardia I charted by the minute. 6 days of a blink pattern nobody would read. The fellow scanned it fast, and his jaw tightened. Get him to MRI. Neutral precautions log roll, only I am calling the attending. He looked at Ashby the way you look at a man whose signature is about to become a problem. You should have paged us a week ago. Ashby went white around the mouth. They rolled Cole out of bed, 9, as a team, 4 sets of hands keeping his spine in one rigid line. Nora walked at the head of the gurney, where she could watch his neck and his eyes at the same time. Doors along the hall stood open as they passed. In one of them, a young woman in a wheelchair watched them go by with a stillness that Nora clocked without meaning to. Corporal Aisha Bell, 23 Marine. Another of Ashby's finished cases, a girl who had come in able to squeeze a hand, and who now, 6 weeks later, could barely lift a thumb, and whose chart also said, no meaningful recovery in Ashby's clean, confident script. Their eyes met for half a second. Nora filed it and kept moving. Ashby caught up at the elevator bank. You are not going up with him. Yes, I am. You have been removed from his care. Remove me after he is stable, Nora said, and pressed the call button. He stepped in front of the gurney. Behind him, the hallway had begun to fill, drawn by the noise, the way hospital halls always were. nurses and residents, and 2 men in wheelchairs, and an old Marine, leaning on a cane, all of them watching. "You don't understand what happens to nurses who do this," Ashby said. "You think a call sign makes you part of something?" Nora looked at him, and for the first time, she did not lower her eyes. Reyes felt it and went still beside the cart. Gloria Ton looked up. "I was part of something," Nora said quietly. The elevator opened behind her. She rolled Cole inside, and as the doors began to close, his lips moved one more time. No sound, only shape. And she read it as clearly as if he had shouted it down a valley 7 years ago. Vesper, her old call sign, the one she had buried with the man it belonged beside. The doors met in the middle, and for the first time in 7 years, Nora Beckett felt the past come up out of the ground to stand behind her. The MRI suite was cold and blue, and far too clean to hold what was about to surface in it. Nora stood at the head of the gurney, with one hand near Cole's shoulder and her eyes on the long muscles of his neck, watching for the smallest drift out of line. The attending neurosurgeon had come down herself, a compact woman with silver threading through her dark hair and the unhurried focus of someone who had stopped being impressed by titles a long time ago. She read the room in about 4 seconds, which meant she read Ashby, who stood against the wall with his arms crossed, and his authority leaking away from him 1 minute at a time. "Dr. Priya Nair," she said, offering Nora a nod instead of a hand, both of them keeping theirs where they were needed. "You are the nurse who called this." "I am. Talk to me while they set up." Nora gave it to her, the way she had once given a flight surgeon a handoff over the noise of turbines, clipped and complete. 7 months post-injury. 6 days of positional bradycardia and hypotension. New pain response localized to the neck, confirmed by blink. Autonomic collapse with extension reversed, with neutral alignment and atropine. Cognition fully intact. Nair listened without interrupting, and at the end, she said only, "Good handoff. Where did you learn to give one like that?" "Somewhere loud," Nora said. The tech reached for a thick wedge of foam to steady Cole's head in the coil. Nora's hand came out before she could think about it. "Not that one. It puts him in extension." The tech frowned. "It is the standard head support. It will drop his pressure inside a minute." Ashby spoke from the wall. "Miss Beckett, stop handling equipment you are not trained on." Nair did not turn around. "Use the flat pad. She is right about the geometry." The tech used the flat pad. The scan began, and the machine started its heavy mechanical knocking, a sound like a steel heart 3 times too big, and one slice at a time, the inside of Cole Brantley's neck appeared on the monitor in the control room. Old trauma. Scarring where the original blast had done its work. Cord swelling that should have been fading by now, and was not. And then, low at the 3rd and 4th cervical level, a small, dark crescent of pressure sitting exactly where nothing was supposed to sit. Nora saw it before anyone spoke. She had spent a career learning to find the one wrong shape in a field of chaos. "There," she said. At the same moment, Nair leaned toward the screen and said, "Stop. Go back. Hold it there." The image sharpened. Nair's face did the thing that competent faces do when they find something they wish they had not. "That is an artifact," Ashby said from the door now. Nair clicked to a second sequence. The dark crescent was still there. "It is not an artifact. That does not account for complete paralysis." "No," Nora said quietly. "But it might account for why he has not recovered an inch in 7 months. If the blast stunned the cord, and this has been sitting on it, pressing a little harder every time somebody tipped his head back, then whatever pathways survived have been buried alive. Buried is not gone." Nair looked at her for a beat longer than the sentence needed. Then she looked back at the screen. "No," she agreed. "Buried is not gone." And Nora, standing in the cold blue light with her thumb finding the burned coin in her pocket, was somewhere else entirely. 7 years back. A mountain valley at 2 in the morning, the kind of dark that has weight to it. Her bird going into a brownout on the approach, the whole world turning to blown grit, and the smell of hot metal and diesel, and then the sick tilt, and the impact that folded the tail like a soda can. Somebody had to go into the burning wreck for the crew still strapped inside, and the beacon was dead, and the smoke was going the wrong way, and she had clipped onto the hoist and gone down through it, because that was the job, and there was no one else to send. Longbow on the radio, one arm hanging useless, calling her heading in a voice scraped raw. And a 19-year-old crew chief named Wyatt Cross, pinned and bleeding, looking up at her through the smoke, like she was the last true thing in the world. She had gotten Wyatt out. She had gotten all of them out. But one, and the one she lost, was not Wyatt. Not that night. Wyatt came later in a different aircraft, in a different kind of dark, with his hand closing around 2 of her fingers, and his blood going tacky on her glove, while she worked on the man beside him, and could not do both at once. "Tell them I wasn't scared," he had said. She had lied to him, and told him he never was. And he had smiled, because they both knew that fear lived inside brave people too. And that was the whole reason bravery counted for anything. After that, she stopped answering to Vesper. She turned in the flight suit and walked into the VA system, where she could save 1 veteran at a time, and tell herself that was a smaller thing, a survivable thing, a thing that would not ask her to lose anyone in a burning aircraft ever again. Beckett. Nair's voice brought her back. The attending was watching her with something that was not quite pity, and not quite recognition, but sat near both. "You went somewhere." "I came back," Nora said. Nair called her senior partner, and while they waited, she keyed the intercom into the scanner room, because a body in that tube for that long is a body alone in the dark. And she had made a private rule a long time ago about not letting people be alone in the dark. "Longbow," she said, "you are in an MRI. You are safe. I am right here on the other side of the glass, and I am not moving." 1 blink at the camera. Yes, there is a piece of pressure sitting on your cord where it does not belong. That is the thing, not the whole story of you. Just a thing, and things can come off. Another blink, and then, slow and effortful, his lips moved at the camera, and she read it, and felt her throat close. "Vesper." "I hear you," she said. "I am still her. Just quieter." Ashby had come into the control room. "He cannot consent to anything by blinking. You are building a surgical case on a man tapping his eyelids at a nurse he thinks he knows from a war." Nora turned to face him fully for the first time all day. "He does not think he knows me," she said. "He knows me. And you are about to find out that a man blinking at me on purpose has been more oriented for the last 6 days than anyone on your service has been willing to notice." Nair stepped between them, not to protect Ashby, but to move things forward. She leaned to the glass. "Senior Chief, I am the neurosurgeon. Blink once for yes, twice for no. Is your name Cole Brantley?" 1 blink. "Are you at Cypress Ridge?" 1 blink. "Do you understand that surgery could make you worse, not better?" 1 blink. "Do you understand that doing nothing leaves you exactly as you are?" 1 blink. "Do you want me to take you to the operating room and try to lift this pressure off your cord?" He blinked once before she finished the sentence. "That," Nair said, straightening, "is consent enough for me for ethics and for legal. Somebody get me an OR." Ashby's voice had gone very quiet. "You are going to regret taking her word over mine." Nair pulled off her reading glasses and looked at him with the flat patience of a woman who had outlasted 100 men exactly like him. "I'm not taking her word, doctor. I'm taking the picture. She just happened to find it a week before you would have. Outside the suite, Nora caught a flicker of motion in the hall. A young aide in scrubs, hovering half in and half out of the doorway, watching the whole exchange with wide, frightened eyes. Kayla Dunn, one of the floor techs, the kind of quiet that came from being yelled at often. When Kayla saw Nora notice her, she flinched back like she had been caught somewhere she was not allowed, and vanished around the corner. Nora filed that too. In a place run by a man like Ashby, the frightened ones always knew the most. The next 2 hours turned into paperwork and quiet war. Legal wanted forms. Ethics wanted the consent documented 3 ways. Administration wanted a risk analysis before anyone touched a decorated patient, whose death would come with a flag on the casket and a reporter at the funeral. Ashby wanted control, and when he could not have the case, he went looking for the next best thing, which was the nurse who had taken it from him. Nora stayed with Cole through all of it because somebody had to, and because she had learned the hard way that the hours a hospital spent arguing about a body were the hours the body used to fail. His pressure dipped twice, while the conference rooms filled with the sound of people covering themselves. Both times, she brought his head back into line and talked him down. Through it, her voice low, and even at his ear. Breathe with the vent longbow. Do not chase it. Let the machine set the pace. One blink. You are not back in the valley. You are on a bad hospital bed in Texas with the worst pillow in the state, and I have seen you survive worse pillows than this. His mouth twitched almost. Not enough for anyone else to catch. She caught it. She caught everything. She was checking his line when Ashby appeared alone in the doorway, and a man like that appearing alone was never good news. Miss Beckett, doctor. I have spoken with administration. You are suspended pending an internal review. Insubordination practicing outside your scope and misrepresenting your professional history. Cole's eyes flared. Nora kept her hand where it was near his shoulder steady. Effective when, she said. Immediately. A float nurse will sit with him. He is unstable, and he communicates with one person on this floor. Pulling me is not a personnel decision. It is a clinical risk. He does not need a person, Ashby said. He needs care. There is a difference, and your inability to see it is the whole problem. Nora turned to look at him. That sentence, she said, is exactly how he lay here for 7 months, while people who could not tell the difference decided he was already gone. Ashby stepped closer, lowering his voice into the register he saved for wounding people quietly. I pulled your file. There are gaps in your employment. Your military record is thin, and half of it is sealed. You are hiding something, and people who hide things do not get to overrule physicians on my floor. There it was. The oldest weapon in the drawer, the one that men who feared competent women reached for every time. Call her certainty instability. Call her memory trauma. Call her experience baggage. Anything at all, as long as it wasn't the truth, which was that she had seen the thing he missed. Everyone in this building is hiding something, Nora said. Not like you. Cole blinked hard twice, 3 times his jaw working. Nora set 2 fingers lightly on the sheet beside his hand, not touching it, just there. Easy, she said to him and to Ashby. How do you think I know him? I have been wondering. From before he was your line item. Nair came back into the room with the fellow and an ethics officer trailing her, and she read the standoff in one glance. Problem. Miss Beckett has been suspended, Ashby said. Nair did not miss a beat. Then unsuspend her, because I need her in my operating room for communication, and I am not delaying a decompression while you two settle a grudge. You cannot pull a suspended nurse into an OR. Watch me chart it as a communication necessity for a locked-in patient. Ethics. She turned to the officer. Does the patient get to say who is present when he consents? The ethics officer, a tired man who had clearly refereed worse, leaned toward the bed. Senior Chief, do you want Nurse Beckett present during your consent and your surgery? One blink. She stays, the officer said, and wrote it down, and that was that. They took Cole to the OR at 6:10. The ward had changed while they were arguing over him. Word travels fast on a floor full of people who have all been underestimated by somebody, and by the time the gurney rolled toward the surgical elevators, the hallway had lined itself with veterans. 2 in wheelchairs. One old man with both hands shaking on a cane come out of his room in his robe to stand at attention as best a body could. A Vietnam vet lifted 2 fingers to his brow in a salute that cost him something. Cole could not return it. His eyes filled instead, and that was its own kind of salute. Near the elevators, a woman in a blazer stepped into the path with 2 folders clutched to her chest like a shield. Diane Voss, Risk Management, the person a hospital sends when it is more afraid of a lawsuit than a death. We need to pause the transport, Voss said. Nair did not slow down. No. The indication is disputed. There is a physician of record who does not agree. The physician of record missed the compression for 7 months. Risk Management can meet me in the OR. Voss looked at Cole the way you look at a liability code that happens to be breathing. Nora saw the monitor twitch, saw his heart rate slide as his body caught the tension in the air, and she stepped to the head of the gurney and put herself between the patient and the folders. Move, she said. Voss blinked. Excuse me. His pressure is dropping because you are standing in front of him arguing about whether he is worth the paperwork. Move. This is precisely the conduct I documented, Ashby said from behind them. Heart rate 40. Cole's color went. Nora dropped the head of the gurney 2 degrees and cupped his neck. Neutral. Atropine at the ready. Voss stepped back at last, more from the look on Nora's face than from the words. The elevator opened. Nair put a hand flat on Ashby's chest as he moved to follow. Not you. I am his neurologist. You were. The doors began to slide shut. Ashby's face twisted in the narrowing gap, and Nora met his eyes through it without a flicker. This is not finished, he said. For him, it might be, she answered, if we stop letting you narrate it. The doors closed. For 3 floors, nobody said anything. Then Gloria Ton let out a slow breath and said to no one in particular, I have wanted to watch someone tell that man to move for 5 years. Nora looked down at Cole. His eyes were on her. One blink. Yes. Outside the OR, she gave the handoff, and then she did not go in because they had to prep him, and there was 1 clean minute before the doors swallowed him. She leaned close. You are not on that ledge, she said. You are not in the valley. You are here, and I found you once, and I am not about to lose you, because a doctor likes being right more than he likes being useful. His lips moved. She read it. Found me. Yes, she said. I found you. They took him through the doors. Nora stepped back against the corridor wall, and only then did her hands finally start to shake, the fine tremor she wore around civilians, the way other people wore a watch. She pressed them flat against the cold wall. 4 counts in. 4 to hold. 4 out. She had not heard the name Vesper out of a living mouth in 7 years, not since Wyatt Cross said it in the back of a bird with his blood on her glove. Down the hall near the family waiting area, a young aide was watching her again. Kayla Dunn, twisting the hem of her scrub top, working up to something, and losing her nerve over and over. Nora pushed off the wall and walked toward her slowly, the way you approach a bird with a broken wing. You have been trying to tell me something all day, Nora said. Kayla's eyes darted down the corridor to make sure Ashby was not in it. The Marine girl, she whispered. Corporal Bell. In room 12. She swallowed. He does the same thing to her chart that he did to your guy. And I saw him go into her room 2 nights ago with a syringe and nothing written down after. I did not say anything because I need this job, and he signs my evaluations. Her voice cracked, but he went into the senior chief's room the same way. Late. No nurse. No order. Everything in Nora went quiet and very cold. When she said, "Tell me exactly when." Kayla gave her the times. Both of them whispered fast, like a confession she had been carrying too long. Then she looked sick with what she had done and said, "Please do not tell him it was me." And Nora said, "He is never going to know he meant it," and watched the girl slip away down the corridor with her shoulders around her ears. Nora stood alone for a moment with a new shape forming in her head, and it was uglier than a missed diagnosis. She was still holding it when the elevator opened, and 2 people she did not know stepped out with the specific, unhurried gravity of men who had spent their lives walking toward bad news. A Navy officer in service dress and a man in a plain dark suit with a visitor badge and a legal aid half a step behind. The officer's eyes swept the corridor, once the way a certain kind of person always sweeps a room first, and landed on her. Nurse Beckett? Yes. Commander Isaiah Pike, Naval Special Warfare Liaison. We were notified that Senior Chief Brantley went to emergency surgery. His gaze moved over her scrubs, her badge, her tired shoes, and then came back up and sharpened. The OR desk said he called someone Vesper before they put him under. The corridor seemed to hold its breath. Nora felt every nearby face turn. Ashby, who had drifted back within earshot the way he always did, seized on it like a lifeline. There. You hear it, Commander. Military role play. This nurse has the entire ward believing she is some kind of operator. It is a fantasy, and it is dangerous. Pike turned his head toward Ashby with the slowness of a gun turret. Doctor, I would stop talking now. Ashby's mouth closed. Pike stepped closer to Nora and lowered his voice, though not so low that the hall could not feel the weight of it. You are Vesper. Her mouth had gone dry. She had pictured being found 100 times over 7 years in 100 different rooms, and never once like this in faded green scrubs outside an operating room, while a man who wanted her erased stood 10 feet away hoping she would deny it. Not for a long time, she said. Something in Pike's face eased a fraction. Sergeant First Class Nora Beckett, United States Army 68 Whiskey, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, Copperline Recovery, 2 combat rescues under fire that I am read into, and about 40 that I am not. He let that sit in the corridor. Silver Star, Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 Purple Hearts, call sign Vesper. It took my office 9 hours to unseal enough of your file to be standing here, and most of it is still black bars. Diane Voss lowered her folders. Lena Ferris stared. Behind the nurse's station, Gloria Tahn had stopped moving entirely. Ashby had gone the color of the wall. Nora kept her hands at her sides so they would not shake. That was another person, she said, in another country. That person is the reason Senior Chief Brantley is alive right now, instead of a name on my desk, Pike said. So forgive me if I do not treat her like she is gone. Down the hall, a set of doors banged open, and Nair came out still in her surgical cap, pulling her mask down, and everyone turned toward her, the way you turn toward the only person in a building who has the answer you are afraid of. He is off the table, Nair said. The decompression is done. She looked straight at Nora. The pressure came off cleaner than I hoped. His cord was compressed, not severed. There were preserved pathways under it. I am not promising you a man who walks. I am telling you there is a man in there worth fighting for, and now he has a chance to fight. For a second, Nora could not make her lungs work. Chance. It was such a small, hard word, and it weighed more than any miracle. "Can I see him?" she asked. "I see you in 20 minutes. One visitor until he stabilizes." Nair's eyes flicked to Pike, then to Ashby, reading the temperature of the corridor. "Somebody want to tell me why there is a Navy commander and a lawyer on my recovery floor?" Because Pike said, "We need to talk about who has been going into Senior Chief Brantley's room at night." The words dropped into the hall and changed it. Nora felt her own pulse settle into the low, cold rhythm she had not felt in years, the one that came when the problem stopped being confusing and started being a target. "Commander," she said, "before you talk to anyone, you should pull 2 things. Pharmacy records for controlled substances on this ward for the last 2 weeks, and the hallway camera outside room 9 and room 12 for the last 2 nights. She did not look at Ashby as she said it. She did not have to. "There will be a nurse assigned to every one of those med pulls. Check whether the nurse who signed was actually on the floor." Pike looked at her for a long moment, and then he looked at his legal aide who was already writing. Ashby's voice came out thinner than he wanted it to. "This is slander. She is a suspended nurse with a sealed file and a grudge inventing a conspiracy to save her own job." "Then the records will clear you in an hour," Nora said, "and you can suspend me twice." He did not answer that. Men like Ashby always had an answer, a fast one, a cutting one, and the absence of it now was the loudest thing he had said all day. By 7, the ICU had Cole. Nora rode up beside him, checking every line and every strap and the exact angle of his neck, and when she got him into the room, she set the call bell against his right cheek, where the smallest returning movement might reach it first. Small hope. Practical hope. The only kind she had ever trusted. At 2 minutes past 8, his eyelids fluttered and then focused. "Longbow," she said. His eyes found her. "You are in the ICU. Surgery is over. The pressure is off your cord. Nobody is promising you anything, but you made it through. And you made it through, Mad, which is exactly how I would have bet." 1 blink. Neck pain. 2 blinks. No. She almost smiled. "Better. Can you feel anything different anywhere?" A long pause. Then his eyes moved down deliberately toward his left hand. She followed his gaze and put 2 fingers against the outside of his left wrist. "Here." 1 blink. Yes. Yesterday there had been nothing there at all. From the doorway, Lena Ferris, who had followed the gurney up without being told to, whispered, "That was absent this morning. I charted it myself. That was absent." "Then chart it present," Nora said. "Time it. Every hour." Cole's lips began to move around the drying tube and she leaned in. "Vesper." "I'm here." He tried again, harder, the effort standing out on his throat. "Not your girl." He rested, gathering it, and forced out the rest of the thought 1 word at a time, because he needed her to have it. "Nights." He came. Nights. Nora went still. "I know," she said quietly. "I already know. We are going to prove it, and then we are going to bury him in it. But right now, you are going to lie there and let your hand come back, because that is your only job tonight." His eyes held hers, wet and furious and completely unmistakably alive, and then they cut past her to the glass wall of the ICU, where a figure had stopped in the corridor to look in. Warren Ashby stood on the other side of the glass, with a tablet in his hand, watching his patient breathe, and on his face was not the anger of a doctor who had been overruled. It was the careful, calculating stillness of a man doing math he did not want anyone to see him doing. Nora rose from the chair and walked to the glass and stood between it and the bed, and for a moment the 2 of them looked at each other through it, and neither one looked away. The records came back at 11 that night, and they came back wrong for Warren Ashby in every way that mattered. Commander Pike laid it out in a small conference room, off the ICU, with his legal aid Nair and Nora at the table. Pharmacy showed a controlled sedative pulled twice in the last 2 weeks under a nurse's login. Both times the assigned nurse had been off the floor, one on a meal break 2 floors down, one already clocked out. The hallway cameras outside room 9 showed a tall figure in a white coat entering at 17 minutes past 2 in the morning. No aide, no chart entry after, and leaving 4 minutes later. The timestamp matched to the minute 1 of the 2 times Kayla Dunn had whispered to Nora outside the OR. Nora never said the girl's name. She did not have to. The camera had done it for her. "There is more," the legal aide said, and slid a single page across the table. It was a consent form. Cole Brantley's name at the bottom, signed for enrollment in an experimental implant, assisted rehabilitation trial run out of a private facility. The sponsor line read, Halcyon Neurodynamics. The date on the signature was 4 days ago. Nora looked at it once and felt the floor tilt. 4 days ago he could not move his hand, she said. He could not hold a pen. He could not have made that mark if you tied the pen to his fist. The signature is forged, Pike said. Badly, if you know what you are looking at. And the trial requires patients classified as complete and permanent. No recovery. No ambiguity. He tapped the page. Halcyon has a defense rehabilitation contract, worth more than this whole hospital. A decorated seal in their trial is not a patient. He is a headline and a funding round. But only if he stays broken. The words settled over the table one at a time, and Nora understood the whole shape of it at last. Ashby had not simply missed the compression. Somewhere along the way, missing it had become useful to him. A man he could keep hopeless was a man he could deliver. The sedation at night was not carelessness. It was maintenance. He had been keeping Cole Brantley quiet enough still, enough complete enough, to hand him to Halcyon before anyone on the floor learned to read a blink. The rage that came up in her, then, was not the tangled, grief-soaked thing she had carried for 7 years. It was clean and cold, and it frightened her a little with how simple it was. "Where is he now?" she asked. Pike's aide checked her phone, and her face changed. His badge just cleared the loading dock, the ambulance bay on the ground floor, 11:51. Nair was already standing. "There is no transport scheduled for Brantley tonight. I would have signed it." Nora was at the door before either of them finished the thought. "He is not transferring a patient," she said. "He is stealing one." She took the stairs. 3 floors down, moving the way she had not let herself move in years, and her body remembered every bit of it, the economy of it, the way you save breath, the way you round a corner. Low. Behind her, she heard Pike on his radio calling VA police to the ambulance bay, and Nair's voice fading above her, and then it was just her own footfalls, and the copper taste high in her throat, and the clean, cold math of distance and time. She came out the stairwell door into the ambulance bay, and the night hit her warm and diesel-scented the big roll doors half open to the dark. A private medical transport van idled near the ramp with its back doors open. A gurney was already loaded halfway inside it, straps hanging loose, and on that gurney was Cole Brantley, awake, his eyes wild above the tube, his one working hand clawing at nothing. Ashby stood at the foot of the gurney in his white coat out of place, and sweating, pushing it the last few feet into the van. And beside the driver's door stood a second man, broad calm, gloved in a dark jacket with no hospital badge, watching the doors Nora had just come through with the flat attention of someone paid to watch doors. Corporate security. Halcyon had sent a body. "Stop pushing that gurney," Nora said. Ashby's head came up. When he saw her, something in his face came apart, the professional mask sliding off to show the panic underneath. "You," he said. "You could not leave one thing alone." Step away from him. You have no idea what these people can do to a person who gets in their way. His voice was climbing. I am transferring a patient to a facility that can actually help him. That is all this is. You forged his consent. You sedated him at night so he could not tell anyone he was getting better. You have been keeping a living man broken so you could sell him to a contractor. She had not raised her voice. She did not need to. Every word landed in the concrete bay like a dropped tool. Do not tell me what this is. The man by the driver's door pushed off the van and started toward her unhurried hands loose. Nora clocked him without looking at him directly. The way you clock a threat you have not decided to fight yet. Weight on the balls of his feet. Trained. Not hospital. Behind him in the shadow of the ramp, a small figure in floor-tech scrubs stood frozen, and Nora understood in an instant that Kayla Dunn had followed the gurney down here too, and that it was Kayla who had propped the stairwell door, Kayla who had made the call, Kayla who had run out of nerve for staying quiet at exactly the moment it counted. Kayla, Nora said, without turning, keeping her eyes on the man closing on her. Get behind the pillar and stay there. The security man reached her. He reached for her arm the way Ashby had that morning, the casual grab of a man used to people who fold. She did not fold. She caught the reaching hand, turned it along the line. The joint did not want to go. Stepped into him instead of away, and used his own forward weight to put him down against the side of the van. Controlled no wasted motion, his arm pinned high behind him, before he understood that the shape of the fight had already changed. He grunted, tried to rise, and she leaned the exact amount of weight that kept him where he was without breaking anything. Because there were cameras in the bay, and there was a right way to do this, and she still even now did the job the right way. You are not paid enough for this, she told him quietly. Stay down, and it stays a bad night. Get up, and it stops being one. He stayed down. Ashby had let go of the gurney and backed toward the front of the van, and for 1 second, his eyes went to the loose straps, to the open doors, to the idling engine, doing the last desperate math of a cornered man. Nora saw his hand move toward his coat pocket, toward the outline of a syringe he had brought for exactly this, for a patient who might wake up and struggle on the way out. Do not, she said. He hesitated. In that hesitation, the stairwell door slammed open, and VI police came through it with Pike a step behind, and the moment broke, and Ashby's hand came away from his pocket empty, because there was suddenly nowhere left in the world for it to go. Nora let the police take the man on the ground. She stepped past all of it to the gurney to Cole, and put both hands on either side of his face, where he could see nothing but her. I have you, she said. You are not going anywhere with anybody. You are going back upstairs to your terrible pillow, and in the morning, you are going to move that hand for a doctor who is actually on your side. His wild eyes found hers and held, and the fight went out of his body all at once, and one tear ran sideways into his hair. Vesper, his lips said, Right here, she said. I told you. I found you once. I do not lose the same man twice. Warren Ashby was arrested in the ambulance bay at 4 minutes past midnight, and the thing that finished him was not the takedown or the van or the man in the dark jacket. It was the paper. The forged consent form pulled the whole structure down once investigators had a reason to look. They found the missing sedative pulls under logins that did not match the nurses who were actually on shift. They found the night camera footage. They found a payment schedule between Ashby and Halcyon Neurodynamics, tied to the enrollment of qualifying patients, and the word qualifying in their contract meant complete and permanent, which meant hopeless, which meant a man was worth more to them, not walking, than walking. When the auditors went back through Ashby's other cases, they found room 12. Corporal Aisha Bell had come into Cypress Ridge able to squeeze a hand, and 6 weeks of Ashby's care, and Ashby's chart had written her down to nothing. A second neurosurgeon brought in during the review found a treatable inflammatory process that had been sitting untouched under a prognosis of no meaningful recovery. Nobody could give Aisha back the weeks, but they could give her the treatment. And 11 days after Ashby was walked out of the building in handcuffs, she lifted her right arm off the blanket 6 inches and held it there and cried, and Nora stood in the doorway of room 12 and let her have the moment without making it about anything but her. Ashby lost his license before he lost his freedom. Halcyon lost its federal rehabilitation contract inside a month, and the story of what a defense contractor had been paying for made enough noise that 3 other VA hospitals opened reviews of their own. Kayla Dunn, who had spent a year believing she was the smallest and most replaceable person on the floor, was named in the investigation as the one who came forward, and Nora made sure the word that reached administration wasn't aide who was scared, but aide who was right. Diane Voss, who had blocked a gurney with 2 folders and a liability code, was quietly moved to a job with fewer patients in it. Commander Pike came back one last time before his part was done, and he brought someone with him. Colonel Marcus Thorne had been Nora's commanding officer in the 160th, and he was the man who had signed her separation papers, and he was the man who had found her outside a hospital morgue the week Wyatt Cross died, and said, "You can put down the uniform, Beckett, but do not mistake putting it down for setting it down. They are not the same thing." He was grayer now. The years had put more weight behind his eyes. He stood in the door of Cole Brantley's ICU room and looked at Nora in her faded green scrubs for a long moment before he said anything at all. "Vesper," he said finally, and her old name did not make her flinch this time. "Colonel, you look tired. I run a rehab floor now. It is a different kind of tired." He came in and stood at the foot of the bed and looked down at Cole, who was awake and tracking, and whose left hand had begun by then to close and open a slow, deliberate inch. "Senior Chief," Thorne said. Cole's eyes moved to him. Thorne straightened by reflex, an old man coming to a kind of attention for a younger one. "Heard you were giving my medic a hard time," blinking at her, making her feel important. Cole's cracked lips pulled, and this time it was almost a real smile. Thorne reached into his coat and took out a single sealed envelope soft at the corners from being carried a long way, and he held it out to Nora. "This was in Cross's effects," he said. "He wrote it before that last flight. It was addressed to you. I've had it in a drawer for 7 years because I could never make myself decide whether giving it to you would help or just open the wound again." He set it in her hand. "I think I was wrong to wait. I think you can carry it now." She did not open it in the room. She waited until the corridor was empty and the lights had gone to their night dimness, and then she sat on the floor of the staff locker room with her back against the cold metal and opened it and read Wyatt Cross's handwriting for the first time in 7 years. "Vesper, if you are reading this, it means I did not make it, and you did, and I need you to not do the thing I know you are going to do. It was not your hands that were too slow. It was the world that was too fast. You cannot pull everybody out of the fire. You just have to keep being the kind of person who goes in. Do not carry me like a ruck the rest of your life. Set me down. That counts too. That counts most." She cried on the locker room floor the way she had not let herself cry in 7 years, quietly, completely. And when it was done, she folded the letter along its old creases and put it in her breast pocket over the burned coin, where she would carry both of them from then on in a way that had nothing to do with a ruck. 3 weeks later, Cole Brantley stood between a set of parallel bars for 11 seconds. His knees shook and his arms carried most of him, and a therapist hovered at each elbow. But he stood on his own legs in the middle of a rehab gym in San Antonio, and at the far end of the bars, Nora waited in her faded green scrubs with her hands loose at her sides. "I stood," he whispered, when they eased him back into the chair. "You stood," she said. "Cypress Ridge changed its rules, and then the region changed its rules. Every veteran who came in with a catastrophic paralysis now got a second independent neurological review before anyone was allowed to write the word permanent in a chart. The nurses on Ward 3 East started calling it the Longbow Review, and the name stuck, and Nora let it stick, because a man should get to leave something behind, besides a bed number. When they stood up, the new Veteran Neurological Rapid Response Program, they made her its clinical lead, and she took it in her faded green scrubs and said only one thing to the room on the first day. "No patient should have to earn the right to be believed," she said. "Cole Brantley should not have needed a call sign for somebody to check his neck." A year after the night in the ambulance bay, Cole walked across the rehab courtyard on a single cane, slow upright, his wife Delia, crying openly beside him and not caring who saw. At the end of the path, he stopped in front of Nora, and he took something out of his jacket, and he pressed it into her hand. It was a flight medic patch, worn soft one she had last seen on a young crew chief's shoulder 7 years ago in a valley full of smoke. "Cross gave it to me the night before," Cole said, his voice still rough but his own now. "Told me if I ever met a nurse named Vesper, I was supposed to give it back to her when she stopped running." He closed her fingers over it. "You stopped." She pinned it inside her locker that evening next to Wyatt's letter, next to the burned coin above a small, dry erase board, where somebody months ago had written 2 words, and nobody had ever wiped them away. Not finished. Nora Beckett never promised anyone they would walk. She had learned in a valley and in a morgue and on a locker room floor that walking was not the thing she was in charge of. What she promised was smaller and harder and better than a miracle. She promised that nobody on her floor would ever again be left alone in the dark, mistaken for gone, while the world decided they were not worth the trouble of a second look. Cole Brantley never called himself healed. Nora never once called herself a hero. But every morning on a ward that had almost buried a living man for the crime of being quiet, they taught the people who worked there a better word than finished, and the word was this: "Not yet." That is where I will leave Nora and Cole tonight, on a courtyard path in the Texas sun, a long way from the valley that made them both. If this story stayed with you, do me a favor and let me know you were here. Tap that like button, subscribe so the next one finds you, and tell me down in the comments where in the world you are listening from tonight. And before you go, one question I keep turning over. If you had been the only person in that room who could see the man behind the silence, would you have had the nerve to speak up when everyone with more power told you to stay quiet? Let me know. I read everyone.